is a critical component of making sure that everybody in America has access to opportunity. You know, I was in Honduras last week, literally a week ago today, for the swearing in of the new president. And I met with some courageous labor leaders who are trying to create opportunity in Honduras. And 2 days later, I learned that one of the union officials down there who has been doing so much, that his father was murdered. They didn't murder him. Now, I don't know who the they is in that sentence quite yet. But they went after his family, which happens so often. We've seen that not only in Honduras, but in other countries where people are fighting for fairness. And so I recognize the challenges internationally and elsewhere that arise in this context. And that is why we continue to fight so hard, because we are not going to restore a thriving middle class here or abroad until we recognize the critical importance of unionization and collective bargaining, and the critical importance that you have done, the work that you have done, Bob, and so many others in this audience. And so we will continue to build on that, and we will continue to make sure that we think about how we fight today's battles and tomorrow's battles. And that is what impresses me among so many things about you, Bob, and your leadership, because you recognize that we need to continue, if we're going to grow, to build strategic partnerships with business and industry and the workforce system. And we saw this in the auto recovery in 2.8 million apprentices. I went to law school because I'm bad at math, but I can read that math and I can interpret that math. And that math is not good for America. And I'll tell you one thing we need to do is restore the stature of apprenticeships, restore the stature of the skilled trades, because in the state of Wisconsin, the average age of a person in the skilled trades is 59. Employers want to grow their business, and they need tomorrow's workforce. And that is why the key to success in the future are these partnerships with government, with employers, with all of you in this room, so that we can build tomorrow's workforce. And I hope we will continue to do that. And we need to continue to focus, as you have done, on fighting tomorrow's battles and not relitigating yesterday's. I applaud the UAW for your flexibility and your new approaches to organizing workers, including embracing a new collaborative model of the Works Council, which has been highly successful in Germany, but has not yet been tried here in America. I applaud your leadership in those issues, because it is so indeed critically important as we move forward. And I applaud the fact, and this is part of your DNA, and has been from the start, that you define success at the UAW not simply by the size of your membership, but by the number of people that you help. I suspect that there are very few minimum wage workers in this room, if any. But you have been at the forefront of our efforts to raise the minimum wage, and we are working like heck to make sure it happens this year. Because this year will be a year of action for the president, and already has been a year of action. But on things like the minimum wage, immigration reform, helping the long-term unemployed, we know we can't do it alone. We need your help. We need your partnership. We need your influence, telling the story. I'll tell you, the minimum wage confounds me. There was this guy named Henry Ford who got it. You know, it was 100 years ago that he doubled the wages for people on the assembly lines. And you know what? I had brunch today with my uncle. He's a professor at the University of Detroit. He's a Jesuit. And he's a historian of technology. And he used to work at the Henry Ford Institute. And I tell you, it's remarkable to talk to him about why Henry Ford did this. You know what the attrition rate was when Henry Ford doubled the wages of workers on the assembly line? It was 360%. How do you build an enterprise if you're losing your workers on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis? And so he doubled the wages of his workers, in part because he recognized that he needed to address the issue of attrition. And the way to address the issue of attrition and build a loyal workforce is to pay them a decent wage. He understood that. But he also understood that when you put money in people's pockets, what do they do with it? They spend it. And when they spend it, and by the way, he also understood that, the people making his cars ought to be able to afford to buy his cars. I think that's a pretty good idea. And he understood that. And so he said, when you put money in people's pockets, they spend it. And what happens when they spend it? Businesses make more things. And what happens when businesses make more things? They have to hire more people. And so that sort of prosperity in the community becomes nationwide prosperity. And if we're going to pick up the pace of growth, and let me note that we have had 46 consecutive months of private sector job growth to the tune of over 8 million jobs. We're making progress without a doubt, thanks to you. But we also recognize that we have so much work to do. There are so many people who are still suffering, including but not limited to the long-term unemployed. And so Henry Ford understood that 100 years ago. And he understood that if you increase what's in people's pockets, people consume more and everybody wins. And so that's what we're trying to do now. In Britain, the Conservative Party just announced their support for an increase in the minimum wage. In America, are you aware of the fact that 1/3 of bank tellers are currently on some form of public assistance? Let me repeat that. Are you aware of the fact that 1/3 of bank tellers working in the United States are currently on some form of public assistance? Food stamps, Medicaid. We've created a structure where the federal government is subsidizing the wages of low-wage workers. We've done a lot of work, and my colleague Mary Beth Maxwell led this effort on behalf of home health workers. And I know we have some public sector union members here, and I want to say thank you for all the work you do in the public sector, because you have been the leader for way too long. And I'll tell you, we've spent a lot of time with home health workers. 1.9 million home health workers in America, and growing as we all age, or at least most of us in this room age. 90% women, 50% minority, over 40% on some form of public assistance. And as a result of a loophole in the Fair Labor Standards Act, they were not entitled to receive the protections of minimum wage laws and overtime. So you had people working 70 hours and making $250, $300 a week. That's not right. And we fixed it, thanks to this president. And we fixed it because FDR, 75 years ago, when he signed the Fair Labor Standards Act that established the minimum wage, he called that piece of legislation the second most important bill after the Social Security Act to help working families and working people. And he recognized that, you know what, the minimum wage reflects our values as a nation. Nobody who works a full-time job should have to live in poverty. That is the value statement. People have the right to vote and not have the right to vote in print. We have to make sure that people have access to health care. We have to make sure that retirement is safe and sound. We have to make sure that there is no such thing as a spare American in this country, that we take use and make use of everybody's talents. And we know that we can only do this and accomplish this if we get your help. Because that's the essence of America. We are all in this together. We are moving in the right direction. We need to pick up the pace of that movement. And we need to make sure that nobody gets kicked to the curb. That's not who we are as a nation. That's never been who you are as a union. And we will use every tool in our arsenal to make sure we accomplish that. Because we are the UAW. We are the United States of America. When we took that Pledge of Allegiance, we said liberty and justice for all.